We were talking about a big win for Shinzo Abe, obviously. Tell us a little bit more about what is a signal about the political savvy that comes from the prime minister? And was this really a vote of confidence for Shinzo Abe, or was he just the more practical choice?
Well, both. And two issues. One, definitely there's a huge threat from North Korea, right? So we need to start very strong stability in politics, first of all. And second is his plan, economic plan. Abenomics should be continued. It's in work in progress. So people believe the current economy is very comfortably growing, and people want to continue. It's growing toward the future.
Can he pursue constitutional reform along with economic reforms?
I think definitely he prefers economic growth as the first priority. And second one can be, one of them is the constitutional changes. So I definitely believe he will touch upon economic growth first.
Okay. You get a sense in the pulse of the Japanese consumer, of course. With this consumption sales tax seem to be possibly a done deal by 2019, how do you think your typical mom and pop in Japan consumer is going to react to this? Is demand prone to suffer?
I don't think so, because at the time of a 3% increase, 80% of the proceeds went to repay the debt. So which means that the general public could not enjoy the increase of the consumption tax by 3%. This time, the Prime Minister proposes that 80% of the total proceeds will go to support the social welfare, because most of people are concerned about the future of their elderly care, including working class, working force generation, I would say. So I think the policy he changed how to use the proceed of the consumption tax is rightful. Though he judged this time, next year he will raise 2%. I don't think that will hurt our economy.
Okay. What sort of threshold do you think the Prime Minister has in raising this consumption tax this time around? Before we kind of heard the yardstick, barring some kind of Lehman crisis or economic shock, this is going to go through. But he has backed away from that before as well. Is there a threshold for him this time around?
Well, the meaningful action for him is to support social welfare, because a lot of people are so afraid of the social welfare, and the proceeds will be used for social welfare instead of repaying the debt. That's the key point. And the people will feel raising the consumption tax will be benefitable to the general public. That's the important thing, because the biggest worry of the general public is social welfare, especially elderly care. And the elderly care should be re-engineered by using that kind of proceed of 2% increase of the consumption tax.
Takeshi-san, I want to ask a question about the election itself. Was it a situation where actually we had Shinzo Abe win it, or was it really a situation where we saw the opposition lose this election? And that's the point I want to get at here, because if it was the opposition which lost this election, then does he really have a mandate?
Okay, both. But if I'm asked, I think opposition parties lost. And I don't think the general public support his spending as much as the 2 trillion yen for education for free. So I think we have to discuss that how we use the budget for the better of the society. I mentioned about the biggest concern of the general public, which is the elderly care instead of free education.
Niinami-san, I'm just curious, you spoke about the resilience, I guess, of the retail environment, of the consumer sentiment, of being able to withstand this next consumption tax hike if it does go through late next year. What's your kind of takeaway on this kind of reflationary sentiment or spirit, animal spirits, if you will, both in consumer sentiment as well as, how the sort of Japan Inc., the corporate environment is taking it? Because we often speak to analysts and they say, it's going to take a long time to get to 2% because of animal spirits, because of this deflationary sentiment really being hard to shake. Do you feel like there's optimism?
Yes, I have optimism by raising that 2%. The reason is the general public is concerned about the elderly care. And the elderly care system should be re-engineered by funding from the 2% increase. Again, last time increase of 3%, it didn't go to support the elderly care so much. If elderly care is well engineered, people will feel comfortable to the future. Then people will be incentivized to spend the money. The stumbling block for the general public not to spend money is because of the concern to the future. That comes from elderly care, not by themselves, their parents as well. So we have to make use of the proceed from a 2% increase. That is the key. But how to make use of the proceed wisely, that is the key thing.
And Takeshi, of course, we've been talking about the labor market and how it's been the tightest in 2 decades or so. Why do you think it's been so tough to see a breakout in wages? Because so far we are seeing mostly just hourly wages for part-time workers, where we are seeing a bit of a climb, but not so much when it comes to full-time workers. Okay,
there is a inertia in the society that anytime we will see the deflation back. So I'm sure that the deflation has gone, but inertia. Second thing is still we can't pass to the consumers by taking price. The reason is again, people are so much afraid of the future because of the elderly care. So elderly care is the most important thing for the government to re-engineer. How will Suntory mitigate this consumption sales tax? Do you think that you're going to be passing on this tax to consumers like the government is hoping for, or do you think that you're going to be absorbing the costs and maybe cutting costs in other assets or parts of the business? We will do everything, but we will launch innovative products. 2% increase means we manufacturers have to offer something new with innovation. So this will bring lots of competition among manufacturers, but innovation is the key. Innovation will be the key. Obviously, would that lead to expansion as well? You've seen, of course, you've had this acquisition of Bean, and you're moving more in your footprint in the U.S. Does perhaps a sluggish Japanese economy push you further into a more international expansion? Yes. Well, we will advance our projects to be overseas more. In the meantime, there is a huge market, especially huge need in this country exists. That is the health consciousness, nutrition, medicine, and longer longevity needs. So we'd like to catch those needs by launching innovative products. So like 2%. Such as the drink with the nutrition, to be very good for getting rid of fats, good for diabetics. So nutrition will be very important. How do you see this relationship that Shinzo Abe does have with President Trump? It seems to be quite cozy. They've been, reaffirming this U.S.-Japan alliance. Is that obviously beneficial for Suntory? How do you see that relationship playing through for your company? Absolutely, it's good because we spent as much as 2 trillion yen, which means $20 billion in the U.S. So the relation between the two countries is very critical for Suntory. And I believe the relation will last forever.
Takeshi-san, I want to get back to your business itself. You just sold an Australian unit that you had as well, which did branded food. Cerebos, I think it's called, if I'm pronouncing it right. What do you plan to do with the rest of the coffee business here? Do you plan more divestments? And if you do, where's the focus of your company? What direction is it going in then?
At this moment, there is no big plan to acquire some other businesses. We like to make some synergies using the coffee business to other countries, especially in Asian countries.
Niinami-san, just before we let you go, what are your prospects when it comes to, in particular, I'm thinking of the Chinese market, but in particular, I guess, across Asia in terms of how political tensions, potential geopolitical tensions could arise and impact your retail business? We've seen that, boycott of Japanese brands taking place in China. Is that something that's always a risk for your business?
I don't think so, because the Japanese government, led by the Prime Minister Abe, is now trying to have the better relation with China by sending as many as 4,000 delegates to One Road, One Belt. That is a huge message from the Prime Minister to have improved the relation with China. So I don't think we will have any conflict in business with China. So I'm not 100% comfortable, but we'll try to penetrate to China as well.
Real quickly, Niinami-san, your outlook for yen? I mean, what level will be much more optimal, I guess, for Suntory?
113.
So staying around these levels,
right.
I think.
This level is good. So it should not be over 120. So 113 to 116, which is very comfortable.